What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Where Stats Meet Instinct. I'm your host, Sam. I'm pumped you're here with me today. So, there's a saying in baseball: you are going to win a third of your games, you are going to lose a third of your games. It's what you do in that other third that's really going to define your season. And that's kind of how the Houston Astros series played out for the A's this week. But for the first time, the A's actually won that 50-50 game, which was really good to see. So, game one, the A's just beat the Astros. They just outplayed them in every facet of the game. You're going to have probably about 50 games like that over the course of the year. Even the bad teams are going to have those 50 wins over the course of the year. Game two, they just got their butts kicked, right? The Astros flipped the script a little bit. It was the exact opposite of game one, where the Astros played better than the A's in every single facet of the game. Now, early in the season, one of the A's issues is they've been losing that other third. They've been losing that toss-up game, that coin flip game. In this one, they were actually able to pull it out and pull it out in dramatic fashion as well. The A's obviously outslugged the Astros, beating them 12-10 on a Brett Rooker extra inning walk-off home run. Now, this was a series the A's had to have, right? As much as you need a series early in the season. Just with the way the A's schedule lines up, with the teams that are coming up, and with the teams they played to start the year, it was really important to get a series win under their belt, especially against a good team like Houston that you're going to play a bunch of times this year. So that was great to see. Just looking into the series, obviously the one thing that stands out is the bats came alive for the first time this year. They've had 11 runs in game one. They had 12 runs in game three. Now, game two, we don't need to talk about. They didn't score at all. But that's kind of the nature of offense. Every now and then you're going to get shut down by a pitcher that has it that day. So the offense came alive. Basically, every single player in the A's lineup hit better in this series than they had in the previous series, with the exception of Shea Langoliers. But you can't expect Shea Langoliers to put on the Superman cape every series. So it was good to see Nick Kurtz take some really, really good swings. As the series wore on, the swings got better and better. And it really looks like he's getting close to what he was last year. The underlying numbers are good. His baseball savant page doesn't look that different than what it looked like last year. He's generally taking balls and swinging at strikes, and it's just a matter of time before he starts running into a few more. But he's getting on base at a high clip. That was good to see. Obviously, Brent Rooker in game three hit 2 home runs, including the walk-off bomb. Lawrence Butler had a solid series. Max Muncy continued his hot stretch. Jacob Wilson was solid. Denzel Clark was better. Jeff McNeil was better. It was just a good all-around offensive series for the A's, and it is kind of what you expect out of this team, right? This team is going to have games where they're just going to outslug you, and there were 2 games in this Houston series where they just outslugged Houston. Now, my biggest question is, are the A's going to be able to win games where they're not just outslugging people? And that's still to be determined a little bit. They've had one other win where they still scored 5 runs. They didn't give up a lot. But really, to this point, their wins have come when they've outslugged people. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can go into New York, which are going to be really, really tough games, especially that Yankees series. The Yankees are pitching the lights out right now. And really see if that offense can carry over, but also to see if they can win some games a few other ways. One guy I wanted to touch on who has gotten limited opportunity so far this year, but has played really, really well in those opportunities is Carlos Cortez. He's hitting 500 right now. And my biggest question about Carlos Cortez going into the season was, is he going to be able to hit the way he did last year? Because he doesn't really bring anything else to the table. He's a left-handed hitting corner outfielder backing up 2 left-handed hitting corner outfielders. He has a role as like a late game pinch hitter, but to keep that role for a long period of time, you have to hit the way he hit last year, and that's really tough to do. But so far, he looks like the exact same guy. Now, with that, I do think there's a necessity for him to get a little more playing time. I think he's earned that, and as long as he's hitting like he's hitting right now, I think the A's need to get him into the lineup a little bit more. Now, it's been suggested, I think on one of Booney's post-game shows, by someone commenting that you platoon Cortez with Clark. So I think there's some validity to that. I'm going to kind of suggest something along those lines, but has a different variation on that. So I think you kind of roll with a little bit of a soft platoon. And what I mean by that is I wouldn't make it a straight platoon where you just hit Clark against lefties, hit Cortez against righties. I don't think that's good for Clark's development on the whole. And I do think you need to give him the at-bats to develop because he brings a dynamic element to this team that no one else brings. I've talked about this so many times, both here and on Twitter. Denzel Clark is an elite defender at a premium position. The A's don't have that. If you basically give up on him early, you're basically guaranteed to have a bad defense. And I'll talk about defense a little bit more in a few minutes. But you're basically guaranteed to have a bad, well below average defense. So I think you still need to roll him out there. He does some things well offensively. There's some people that think he's kind of a lost cause offensively. He does a few things well. He hits the ball really, really hard, and he has really, really good bat speed. The issue is he hits the ball on the ground, right? So I think you can kind of manipulate some matchups where you start Clark 2/3 of the time and you start Cortez once a series, which is more than Cortez has been starting. So what I would do is start Denzel Clark full-time against lefties. Every time there's a lefty in the lineup, he starts. Against righties, I would pick and choose the matchup. If it's a right-hander that tends to get a lot of ground balls or throws a really heavy amount of breaking balls, those guys are probably going to eat up Denzel Clark with how he hits. Ground ball pitchers tend to eat up ground ball hitters because ground ball hitters obviously have the tendency to hit the ball on the ground. Ground ball pitchers, that's what you're trying to do. So you get a ton of ground balls in that matchup. And I don't really think that's a beneficial matchup for Denzel. So like with Lance McCullers Jr., there's a lot of sinkers and a lot of breaking balls. Really bad matchup for Denzel, but that's the exact matchup that Cortez is going to have a lot of success in. So I think you pick matchups where if it's a fly ball pitcher that's a right-hander or a lefty, you play Denzel Clark. That'll give him about 2/3 of the starts. Now with Carlos Cortez, you pick matchups where it's either breaking ball heavy righties or sinker ball righties, and you give Cortez those starts. Now, they're going to probably split the at-bats fairly evenly with that. Why? Because Denzel Clark gets pinch hit for a lot by Carlos Cortez late in the year or late in the game. And so I think there's a way where the at-bats actually end up fairly even with Denzel Clark getting a majority of the starts. I think that allows Denzel Clark to continue to develop. I think that allows him to continue to bring that defensive element to the team. But I also think that allows you to get Carlos Cortez more at-bats, which I feel like he's earned at this point. So maybe I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too with kind of the soft platoon thing. But I think that's a way you could get Carlos Cortez the at-bats he's earned while still prioritizing Denzel Clark's development and prioritizing the defense and that dynamic element that Denzel Clark and nobody else in this organization can bring to this team this year. So I've really liked what I've seen from Carlos Cortez. And I've mentioned this before. He's just the type of hitter I love where it's a gritty at-bat. There's not one specific way you feel like you can get him out consistently. I feel like he hits fastballs with velocity. I feel like he hits fastballs in. I feel like he can go the other way. I feel like he handles breaking balls and changeups decent as well. So he's just the guy I like. You feel like pitchers have to come to him in that smaller kind of strike zone. And if they don't throw strikes, he's going to take some good pitches. And he just finds a way to put up a good at-bat. I love that. He just needs to keep doing that because he doesn't really bring a ton else to the team. But shoot, man, as long as he's hitting the way he's hitting, he's going to be on this team and he's going to play an important role on this team. So I was really excited about Carlos Cortez. I thought he really brought them a spark in the third game of the series. And he's hit the ball hard all year, and he's doing exactly what he did last year. So I was really excited about that. I think there's a way you can get him more at-bats without losing that Denzel Clark element and without hurting Denzel Clark's development. So that's something I want to see. Now, it was a great series win, right? It was a great series win. You played a good team. You won the series. You won a coin flip game. That was awesome. But the pitching staff is a major issue. And I think we all can acknowledge that, and we all can see that at this point of the year. But a couple things I want to touch on. Pitching staff leads baseball in walks this year. They have 59 walks. This last weekend against Houston, they walked 24, which was by far the most in Major League Baseball on a weekend where in Major League Baseball, there was a record set for most walks in a weekend. So that's obviously not good. Now, typically, pitchers that walk a lot of guys, they kind of hedge that by striking out a lot of guys, and the A's aren't doing that right now. The A's have the second fewest amount of strikeouts in Major League Baseball from a pitching staff. So they have 59 walks and 63 strikeouts. That's really close to a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's not a sustainable recipe for success. Now, the bullpen we've talked about, the bullpen's going to walk a lot of guys, and what you've seen this year is the bullpen walk a lot of guys. Hogan Harris has 8 walks. Alvarado has walked several guys. Michael Kelly, the walks are really coming back to bite him. He walked 4 guys this series, so that wasn't great. And just overall in the bullpen, you have guys like Medina. You have guys like Barlow. You have a lot of guys that walk guys, right? And no one in this bullpen to this point has really stepped up in a major way. And that's not great because that makes it where as a manager, you're just guessing as to who to put in the game. It's really important to know where your outs are coming from in the bullpen. And what I mean by that is you can have a bullpen of like fairly solid relievers with like high 3s ERAs, but if you don't have a lockdown guy that you can turn to in big spots to get those outs, when you have a bunch of relievers with like high 3s or low 4s ERAs, you are really just guessing as to who's going to get the outs that day. And there's a really good chance one of those guys kind of blows up. And we've seen that a couple times this year with the A's where they have guys that have had several good outings and then a few blow-up outings. And overall, the bullpen has just not really looked good. They're walking guys. They're giving up hits. You're kind of just guessing as to who's going to get outs at the end of the game. Now, I think Sterner has thrown the best. I think he's thrown well. He is one guy in the bullpen who gets strikeouts. He hasn't really walked a ton of guys. He looks good. Mark Leiter Jr. has given up hits, but he hasn't really walked guys, so that is one of the benefits for him. But the rest of the guys, man, you're just hoping they throw strikes. And so in general, I'm usually pretty measured when I call for moves to be made, just because I think there's a development process. You have to let guys work through struggles. If you send guys down as soon as they struggle, you're just going to create a whole team where everyone's pressing and everyone's putting a lot of pressure on themselves. And that's not a recipe for success in baseball. That's good in football and in basketball and stuff like that. But baseball, it's such a fine motor skill to hit a baseball that when guys are pressing, that's the number one way to ruin hitters specifically. So I tend to be fairly slow with wanting to make moves. The one area where I think the A's can make moves fairly quickly is the bullpen. And the reason I think that is because relievers fluctuate greatly year to year. There's most relievers that are major league relievers, they have a 1 or 2 year peak where they're really good. And then the rest of the time, they're just kind of fighting on the fringes of Major League Baseball. Year to year, there is so much fluctuation in performance for relievers. There's very few like Kenley Jansen's that are just consistent for a decade or more, right? What you end up with is a lot of guys that have 1 or 2 peak years and then have some struggles after that, maybe a couple peak years at a later point in their career. So even good relievers, even the guys that we're really confident in on the A's, you can't bank on them being good year to year to year. So I do think it makes sense to kind of cycle through relievers. You can see what their stuff looks like. If they're not throwing strikes, it makes sense to cycle through relievers a little bit. And one thing I wanted to touch on is the Aviators bullpen has been dominant this year. Like they have been really, really good. And I don't say this like to be a smartass or anything, but I would honestly trust the Aviators bullpen right now with how they're performing over the A's current bullpen. Like the Aviators bullpen has been lights out. And about 2 minutes before I came on, we found out that the A's are calling up one of the Aviators relievers. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But you have Brooks Kriske in AAA. He has thrown 4 1/3 innings. He's given up 1 run. He's walked 1. He has struck out 9. So he has been racking up the strikeouts. And I watched him throw the other day. And he has a really, really good split or forkball type pitch, kind of similar to Mark Leiter Jr., but he's missing a ton of bats in AAA. Now, he has a little bit of a history with walks, but he's not walking guys this year, and he's racking up the strikeouts. So to address that strikeout issue in the bullpen, he could be a guy that the A's call up within the next couple of weeks that could make an impact. Wander Suero, is throwing well. He's thrown 3 2/3 shutout innings, got a couple of saves. Nick Anderson, who almost made the roster out of spring training, has thrown 4 shutout innings. I don't believe he's given up a hit to this point. So there's options there. And the guy who was just called up, Joel Kuno, he almost made the team out of spring training as well. And he's a guy that has major league experience. He throws a 97-mile-an-hour sinker. If you look at his spring training numbers, they're kind of funky because he gave up a lot of hits, but he didn't give up a lot of runs, and his strikeout to walk ratio is really good. Now, in his first 3 outings in AAA, or first 2 outings in AAA, he's thrown 3 innings. He's yet to give up a hit. He's walked 1. He's struck out 6. He's got a 97-mile-an-hour sinker that could be a really good pitch for him, and that really fits kind of what the A's are doing this year with their pitching philosophy. And so I'm excited that they made a move to bring up a guy that can pitch in the bullpen right now. He has the stuff to be successful. And like I said, year over year, there's always guys that come up from the minor leagues. There's always guys that you weren't expecting that can make a serious impact on the bullpen. And I think just with how many walks the A's have in the bullpen right now and how inconsistent they've been, it makes sense to get the shuttle between AAA and the big league started, because you can call up relievers, you can send them down over the course of the year, and you can find a mix that really works for the A's bullpen. And I think they need to start kind of thinking outside the box to find that mix. Now, the one issue with all 4 of those guys I mentioned, none of them are on the 40-man roster. So with Cunell coming up, either someone's going to have to be DFA'd or maybe Gunnar Hoglund goes on the 60-day IL, depending on how he's recovering from his injury. But I do think it makes sense to start shuttling some guys back and forth because this pitching staff needs it, and there's some guys in AAA that are really, really throwing well. Now, Jack Perkins is another one that I think a lot of people are going to want called up at some point soon. The issue with Jack Perkins is he doesn't really solve the biggest issue in the A's bullpen right now, which is walks. Like, yes, he has really good stuff and he can contribute. He's been a little up and down in AAA. I think he's walked 6 guys at this point in his 3 outings. He has the stuff. He will probably be better than some of the guys currently in the bullpen. But the issue right now is he doesn't solve their biggest issue. Like, the A's need some guys that can throw strikes and that can get outs. And I think Perkins can get outs, but he's also going to walk a lot of guys. And that's something the A's really can't afford right now. Like, they already have plenty of walks on their staff. So that's something that they need to address. It's good to see that the A's are kind of addressing that early. Like I said, with pitchers, I think you can be a little quicker on the trigger with guys, calling them up, sending them down. Where with position players, I think it makes sense to be a little bit more patient. Now, obviously, the guy who Cunell is replacing is Luis Morales. So I thought Luis Morales would get one more start. Reason being, not that I think he's pitching well enough to get another start, but there's no real clear option as to who's going to start. Now, with the A's calling up a reliever, you would think Ginn is going to move into the rotation. I wouldn't expect Ginn to be able to go more than 4 innings in his first start just because he's been pitching in more of a shorter relief role the last few weeks. So I don't think his pitch count's super built up. I think that's really going to turn into more of a staff day. If he's throwing out of the – or if he's in the rotation. And in AAA, there's just nobody right now that is an obvious fit to call up. Last year when Joey Estes was really struggling through his first 2 starts, JT Ginn was absolutely dominating AAA, so it made all the sense in the world to just flip those guys. With the Aviators, I don't think Jump is quite ready. I watched his last start. The numbers look okay, and he is throwing okay. The stuff is good. He's having some trouble putting away hitters, and that's something he was also kind of struggling with in AAA, and I think Kotsay mentioned that when he was asked about Gage Jump at the end of spring training. He's getting ahead in counts 0-2, and then he's kind of struggling to find that strikeout pitch, and he's working a lot of deep counts. Like, there were a bunch of situations where he was – ahead in the count 0-2, and then the count would get to 3-2. And a lot of the time he would make pitches to get out of that, but he's not consistently putting away hitters. I think he needs to consistently put away AAA hitters before he can get to the big leagues. Now, I'm super high on Gage Jump. I picked him as the A's breakout player this year. I said he's going to get 20 starts this year. I still think he might, but I think this is too early to call him up just based on the sample size. He's working really deep counts. He's not getting super deep into games. He's having a little trouble putting guys away. So the numbers are good, and that's a credit to him for really finding ways to get outs when he needs to get outs. But I don't think he's really a guy that steps into this rotation at this very moment and helps them take a big step forward. Now, a month from now, hopefully he's that guy where he's finding ways to put hitters away. But I think we just need to be a little bit patient with Gage Jump. Now, the one starter I was kind of hoping would get called up, and this is a little bit just selfish on my part because I want to see this guy, is Cade Morris. He's been the best starter for the Aviators this year. He threw really well in AAA down the stretch last year. He's throwing well this year. He did a solid job in spring training. He's a guy I want to see. He's one of their prospects, and he's throwing well. So I was kind of hoping they would call him up. Now, the thing is, he profiles like really similarly to JT Ginn. They're both kind of right-handed sinker ballers that get right-handers out, but struggle to get left-handers out pretty significantly. So my thought is, why not call up Cade Morris? Because we kind of know what JT Ginn is, and why not give this guy a shot? And I'm sure the A's counter to that is, yeah, but we'd have to DFA somebody to do that. Whereas Ginn, who's probably going to provide something similar, can just step into the rotation right now, and we don't have to DFA anyone. So I totally understand the roster gymnastics that probably played a part in that. But I am looking forward to Cade Morris making his major league debut at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But at the same time, hopefully Gage Jump goes out there and shoves in the rotation, and he really starts to lock things down a little bit. So that was a pretty significant roster move. Luis Morales clearly didn't have it. Again, I thought he might get one more start just because I didn't think there was a clear option to fill his role. But once you start walking guys, man, it doesn't give management much of a choice. I said after his first start, you let him work through struggles as long as he is throwing strikes. And he stopped throwing strikes. So there's only so much you can do there. I mentioned too, like, this is one of the issues of struggling in spring training. Not that you necessarily lose your job, but your leash is really short. And I said at the end of spring training, going in, I would have thought Luis Morales would be given 4 or 5 starts to struggle in the regular season. But at the end of spring training, I was thinking it was more 2 or 3. Turns out it was only 2. But he's really struggled now. I don't think this is a situation like Joey Estes last year, where he's just kind of out of the picture for the rest of the year. I think the A's are hoping there's a few adjustments he can make, whatever those may be, that will lead him to being one of their main contributors later in the year. So I'm hoping for that for Morales because he has really, really legit stuff. The other thing too is Morales would look really good in the bullpen. Like in the bullpen, he would throw 98 to 100 miles an hour with a filthy sweeper, and he can kind of just focus on those 2 pitches. That's not a long-term thing. I don't think. I still think you work with him as a starter, but who knows? Late in the year, if he's starting to put it together and the rotation's kind of settled in and guys have been throwing fairly well, I could see him coming up and being a leverage guy late in the year. I could also see Gage Jump doing that too with the bullpen thing, at least for this year, and then the A's transition him to the rotation next year. But I'm hoping Gage Jump sticks in the rotation at some point around the end of May or even sooner, or even a little later than that. I hope he's a guy that really establishes himself in the rotation. One other thing I wanted to touch on that's fairly interesting. So the strikeout to walk thing, part of that is the A's pitching. Another part of that is you are playing teams that are known for not striking out and walking a lot. Both Houston and the Blue Jays are known for those 2 things. They do not strike out and they walk quite a bit. So that could be contributing to it too. But either way, strikeout to walk ratio is way worse than it should be. It should be nowhere near 1-to-1 at the major league level. Now, it's tough because with the opposing teams hitting and with the A's hitting and the A's pitching and whatever, it's such a small sample size. It's tough to say if it's just that you've played good opponents and they're hitting really well, or if opponent pitchers are throwing really well, or if the A's are struggling in one way or another, because there's just not a big enough sample size to know if like the other team's just really good at one thing or if the A's are just really bad at one thing. The one thing that is completely independent of the A's and what they're doing is the opposing team's defense. And I saw something pretty interesting today. The Braves are first in Major League Baseball by a pretty significant amount in defensive runs saved. The second best team in that category is the Blue Jays, and the 6th best team in that category is the Houston Astros. I believe the Braves had 9 defensive runs saved. The Blue Jays had 6, either 5 or 6, and Houston had 3. So that's completely independent of the A's, but the A's have for sure faced the best defenses of any team in Major League Baseball so far this year. So I do think there's an element to the A's of like keeping that in mind, because that's a situation. Defenses are something people don't think a lot about. They think about hitting and pitching, but defense does play a major factor in the game. And the A's have played some really, really good defenses this year. The A's were at -2 for defensive run saved, which isn't great, obviously. And I think we've kind of seen that. Their defense hasn't been special to start the year, which is another reason why I think you need Denzel out there. But they have faced really good defenses, completely independent of anything the A's are doing. The A's have faced really good defenses. They have faced the best defenses in Major League Baseball to start the season. I think the A's are going to start kind of having that even out a little bit over the next few weeks, where they're going to face some weaker defenses. Some more balls are going to fall in, and that's going to lead to some more runs. Like the A's have already – the offense is starting to wake up. They've scored double-digit runs in 2 of the last 3 games, and that's why they were able to take the series in Houston. But I think there's more offense to come, because opposing teams are clearly playing elite defense against the A's, and that's not going to continue over the course of the season. So I thought that was interesting. Looking forward to this road trip and kind of expectations. The first game in New York against the Yankees is going to be the toughest one. Cam Schittler has been the best pitcher in baseball to start the year. He's allowed 3 base runners through his first 2 starts, and he's kind of looking like the next great pitcher in the American League. Like his stuff is that good. So that is going to be a tall task for the A's. That is probably not going to be a game where the A's are just going to be able to outslug the Yankees to win a game. They're going to have to win that through other methods, which the A's haven't really shown they've been able to do this early in the season. Game 2 is against Will Warren. He's a little more gettable, but he's a very good pitcher as well. Game 3 is against David Weathers. That's probably their best shot to win the game, because that's Springs against Weathers. Springs has been great to start the year, and Weathers has given up a few runs. He's still a really good pitcher. This whole road trip, these 6 games, like I think the worst pitcher they face, I don't want to say worst because he's an all-star, but it is probably David Peterson of the Mets, and he would still be one of the best pitchers on the A's staff. He's probably in that tier with Jeffrey Springs in terms of like how good they are. The A's are facing 6 really good pitchers on this road trip. Now, if they can take 1 against the Yankees and 2 against the Mets, that will be a phenomenal road trip. That would make the A's 6-9 in their first 15 games. Booney's talked about that a lot, about how that's kind of his goal for the A's, and I think that's a pretty solid goal. Now, that's going to take a lot, but this A's team is capable of doing it. I mean, they showed it against Houston. Like, this team is capable of scoring runs with anybody, hitting with the best of them. If the pitching settles in a little bit, I think they're more than capable of splitting this road trip, even taking maybe 4. But it's going to be incredibly difficult. The Yankees have the best pitching staff in baseball by the numbers to start the year. Now, that might regress a little bit. I think the A's have a really good chance of putting up some runs on them where they haven't necessarily been scored on against previous opponents. But that's going to be a really tough series. The first game is going to be the toughest one, man. If they win this first game tomorrow or today, by the time you're listening to it, that will be a massive win that could really catapult them on to bigger and better things. So that's going to be a really tough game. If they get that, I'm going to feel really, really optimistic about the rest of the road trip. But the A's are going to have to grind. They're going to have to battle. They're facing 6 very good starting pitchers. They're going to have to find ways to win games that they haven't really won to this point this year, right? They can outslug teams, but can they beat those teams in other ways? We will find out. I like what they're doing in terms of the bullpen. The Aviators bullpen has been really good this year. Like, they have been really good. There are some options there that will contribute to the A's in a big way this year. I think Jack Perkins, Anderson, Suero, and Krisky are all guys to keep an eye on that could move into this bullpen where there's going to be plenty of opportunity and they can make a major impact on the team. I'd like to see Cade Morris up at some point this year. Part of that is just I want to see him. Like, he's thrown well in spring training. He's thrown well this year in AAA. He's a guy who's really earned it at this point. He's worked his way through the system and has done some good things. But yeah, man, the A's series win against Houston was huge. It was huge. You need a series win early in the year. You don't want to go 3 straight drop the first 3 series and then go on this New York swing. So taking that against Houston, especially a team you're going to play a lot this year, is something that the A's really needed to do. I was really excited they did that, especially in the fashion they did it, right? Walk-off home runs. There's not a better ending to a game than that. It was great to see from Brent Rooker, who's a guy who struggled this year. What did I say 2 episodes ago? I said things will get better. There are going to be times where this team absolutely bludgeons teams to death with the offense. They're going to have some really cool walk-offs. There are going to be some really great moments this year. We got our first one this past weekend. Hopefully this road trip gives us a few more. So I will wrap it up there, guys. Again, like and subscribe to this channel, guys. That helps us out a ton. The more A's content out there, the better for everybody. A's fans need more resources, need more podcasts to listen to. And what we're doing here, I think, is really providing that for a fan base that desperately needs it. I'm really optimistic about this team moving forward. They're going to need to find ways to win in a variety of ways. Hopefully they do that. I think they showed a little bit of guts and a little bit of character that suggests hopefully they will find some ways to do that. But again, guys, I will wrap it up there. This has been another episode of Where Stats Meet Instinct. I'm your host, Sam. You can find me on Twitter @StraightA's. And as always, guys, go A's.